Hello, welcome to the League One predictions for the 2024-25 season from the Honest Football Podcast. I'm a very dark Craig Savage, and with me as always is Mr. Daniel Cody. The light's gone out where I am. It's not ideal, but it's back to the old days of the Garage podcasts. What we got today is the predictions of the League One. We're going to guess the bottom four, the playoffs, and the top two. But obviously, while you're in the League One, you've got the Fantasy EFL. Please do join us on Fantasy EFL. The link is down below to join us. You'll be competing against myself, Cody, and Charlie Betts. So let's get on with this show. We'll start off with the bottom four. Cody, who you got in 24th place?
Well, last season, we both looked ridiculous because we put them in a relegation zone in League Two. And I'm going to start by potentially making the same mistake again because I've gone for Crawley Town. Look, they were so good in those three EFL playoff matches last season. I know we talked yesterday about how bad MK Dons were and the final against Crewe where they were the better team, but Crawley were magnificent in all three matches. You've got to give them credit. They were probably the biggest surprise in the EFL over the season. However, despite being the relegation favourites and then winning at Wembley, they've had a mass exodus of stars. They've had players poached from everywhere. I mean, you look at all of the players that have gone, it's probably easier to name the ones that are left from their stars, but particularly their goalkeeper and their top scorer, just to name a couple, are going to be important this season without them. So it will be another miracle if Scott Lindsay can keep Crawley in League One. I hope for his sake he can do it because he's been an excellent coach there. He's surprised a lot of people, but for me, it's just a bridge too far. Although potentially, if they can replace all those stars in the next month, you never know.
No, I totally agree. I'm going for Crawley for the second straight year of finishing bottom of the league, even though they got promoted last season, as you said. Totally exact same thoughts of how you what you just said. It's going to be a very tough ask. I don't think anyone would have anticipated Crawley to be promoted. Obviously, not me, but the manner they did was very impressive, and you have to give them a lot of credit. Despite all the shenanigans they've had in the past few years, it seemed to have clicked the last back end of the last season. So you've got to give them a lot of respect for that. But yeah, for me, 24th place is Crawley Town, in my opinion. Right, 23rd place.
I've gone with my sort of theme of the week, to be honest, which is sides that have flirted with it for a few years are getting a bit closer. And this season, I think, will drop in. And I've gone for Shrewsbury Town. I know they've become one of the favourites now, but I really worry for them this season. They were the lowest scorers in the league last year, only 35 goals in 46 matches. And while they've signed a couple of strikers with EFL experience, John Mark is probably the most notable name. I'm just not sure it'll be enough. They've lost 3 or 4 players from the first team to League One rivals. They got closer in the last couple of seasons. They didn't survive by much last year. I know Paul Hurst has done a good job there before. He's basically replicating his career again a decade later, but even with him in charge, I'm not sure that they'll be able to survive. If they do, it'll be close and it'll be another tough battle. So Shrewsbury, 23rd for me.
23rd place for me is Burton Albion. This is another team that has flirted a little bit down that bottom half of League One. They've just sat there recently, and I don't know where their path is going for Burton Albion. Obviously, you're going to lose players, they're going to gain players, but they hadn't really set the world like the last couple of years. I know we predicted them a couple of years ago to be higher up, probably playoffs from recent memory, but I don't see it happening. I think they're going to finish in 23rd place. Right, 22nd.
22nd, I've gone for another of the promoted teams, I'm afraid, and they came up after years of expectation and the one time we didn't predict them, so I'm going to get them in the prediction show again. They felt left out last year. It's Mansfield Town. I really like Nigel Clough. He's done a really good job. He had them up there consistently after a number of years with the club floundering. But the summer's been a bit reserved for my liking. I know it's not a scattergun approach that you want, but he's only really added Lee Gregory. Adi Oshalaja adds a bit of experience at the back. And while I do think that Keanu Bacchus might be one of the signings of the season in the league, he came on a free from St Mirren. You know I like my Scottish football. But basically to stay up for me, they're going to need Keylor Dunn to score the goals he scored in League Two. And I'm not sure the evidence is there that he's going to score as many. If he does, Mansfield might be all right because I think the next 4 or 5 up are pretty tight. But I think in a close battle, they were probably the ones I would pick as the favourites out of them to go down.
22nd place for me is Cambridge United. Obviously, another team that's just been flirting in that bottom half of League One. Obviously, replaced Neil Harris, was doing pretty well for them when he took over. And then he went back to Millwall. Gary Monk's in charge. I don't have any trust in Gary Monk, and I think Cambridge could be caught out as well to be in that bottom four. I think it'd be quite tight bottom half this season, so I think Cambridge could slip into that. 21st, the final position of the relegation.
Yeah, I'll just go back to your point now. I do agree with you in terms of the bottom half. I think anyone from maybe 14th or 15th has a realistic chance of going down this year. I was really torn on the last place between 4 or 5, and you'll be surprised by a couple of them because I did mention Burton. I thought about them, but I've actually put them a few places up now. They've signed Harry Isted, obviously, we know, and Daniel Aworzi, who was the top scorer at Crawley. Exeter had a good year last year, but the goals are the problem for them. I think Northampton are one of those who are starting to slide down a division again.
Cobblers.
Absolutely. But I do think they'll go close to going down this year. And then I was left between two, and you're going to be surprised here because I had Cambridge United, which you've obviously gone for, and Stevenage is my other one. I think they might go close this year, and I think you'll have them in 21st, to be honest. But look, it's going to be a big change without Steve Evans. Alex Revel wasn't the most inspiring appointment. And if he doesn't go for the same bold approach, which worked for Steve Evans and shocked teams tactically, I do worry if they'll be able to do the same again. I'm so torn between them and Cambridge because Cambridge just don't score enough goals. They have brought in Shane Lavery, which gives them a little bit of hope if they can keep him fit. And they've put experience in the middle with Gary Gardner and Corey Smith. But I think this could go all the way between maybe them two and Northampton. I know you're going to go for Stevenage, so if I want to win, I've got to go for something else. For I'm going to go for Cambridge United. I'll be honest with you, I can see Gary Monk either walking or being sacked, and then it depends on the recruitment after that. And of course, we know the EFL merry-go-round, it could go wrong or the other way. But then equally, I think Stevenage will change manager during the year as well.
Totally agree. I have gone for Stevenage in 21st. I think the appointment of Alex Ravel is a bad one. Obviously, Steve Evans does Steve Evans things in League One. I thought well, kick in every week from you and Charlie every Saturday, and about how well Stevenage was doing, and it proves that it was just Steve Evans in the end. And obviously, he went off to Rotherham after they were relegated quite early on in the Championship, and he started picking up points straight away. So for me, I think it's a very bad appointment. I'm not convinced on it. So yeah, I think it's Stevenage. I think it's obviously great first 3 quarters of last season. Obviously getting promoted back to League One, but it faded away massively. So I just don't see it changing around again. So I think 21st place is Stevenage. Right, let's move on to the top 6 in the playoffs. Obviously, the start of the six spots. Who are you gone for?
I felt this one's quite tough. I think the outsiders for the playoffs are pretty close. I mean, going up probably, so if I run you up from 10, I've got Stockport, Wigan, Barnsley, and Huddersfield all missing out, which might give you an idea of some of the teams I might have in there. But that's my 10th up to 7th. In 6th, I've gone from the sneak in this year after just missing out last time, and I've gone for Blackpool. Neil Critchley's done a good job there. He's been very solid since coming back again. They managed to get Jordan Rhodes to rejoin permanently after his loan spell last season where he scored goals, and maybe they can finally give a home to Ashley Fletcher, who can provide some competition there as well. But they've added a bit of EFL experience. The likes of Lee Evans, Hayden Coulson had some quality, and I just think they might pick them this year. We're not sure what Huddersfield are going to do with Michael Duff. Barnsley have got a new manager as well, a little change in their squad, a bit of experience. So I think it's going to be incredibly tight, but I've gone for Blackpool maybe as a safer option there.
I've gone for Huddersfield in 6th spot. I don't know. I don't know what to expect from Huddersfield. They had an absolute disaster of a season. A couple of managerial changes, people we never even heard of, and will never even hear of again. And they've gone for someone that has that League One experience. Michael Duff, obviously with Barnsley, obviously a little bit with Cheltenham as well, and that stuff is a good appointment, but it's taken 4 managerial appointments to get. Well, to be fair, Darren Moore's not a bad appointment. They just didn't use him.
It was the timing, wasn't it, with all the sackings?
Yeah.
The timing of Warnock, the timing of Moore, it was just poor.
Should have just stuck with Warnock at the end of the day. They might have been safe, but if they can keep some of their players, which I doubt they would have from the Championship, they could be very strong. It might take a while for them to get going, but I think they'll be in the playoffs this season. But spoilers, I don't think they're going to go up. So right, 5th place.
Fifth place for me, they're always in there. I've gone for Peterborough United. They were really good last season, top scorers in the league, scoring goals galore, constant attacking threat. I do wonder if that approach in the away leg against Oxford in the playoffs was a direct hangover of what happened against Sheffield Wednesday the year before, because they tried to play for a narrow victory, narrow defeat or a draw and thought they were happy with a 1-0 defeat, then couldn't take advantage in the second leg. They've done the usual approach. They've signed Chris Clark, who was brilliant for Altrincham last year. Abraham Otto, I've watched a couple of times at Harrogate last year, looked really classy. So it's just whether those signings can step up. They've obviously lost Ronnie Edwards. They've lost Harrison Burrows, both to teams in the top 2 tiers. But you just can't back against Peterborough being in the top 6. And normally they're in those playoff places somewhere.
They'll be fighting, but they're going to miss out, from my opinion. Fifth place for me is Charlton Athletic. Obviously, there's a lot of Luton connection there with Charlton Athletic. I would have said Harry Iceland now, but he's gone to Burton. But obviously, Nathan Jones in charge. Nathan Jones, once he gets a team that he can get style, they are normally pretty strong. Well, if you have Luton, they're normally pretty strong. But he's got Luton players in it this time. Obviously, Luke Berry's signed for them. Danny Hilton was on trial. Dan Potts was on trial. If they can get over the line, those signings, I know Nathan would definitely want to do that. But you know how passionate Nathan is on the sideline. It does get people up the wrong stick. But I loved it at the time. And he's going to be aggressive. He's going to be in that fight. And I feel like if he can get it to work, they will be fighting for the playoffs. So I'm going for Charlton fifth. Fourth place.
My fourth place is a bit of an interesting one because I reckon you'll have them higher up. But I was a little surprised this manager kept his job in the summer. I've gone for Bolton and Ian Evatt because look, they lost in the final last year where they just didn't turn up for the big game. And they had their warning sign in the second leg against Barnsley where they nearly threw it away against a far inferior opposition. And while they can lose a game of that magnitude, the playoff final can go either way. I was just so surprised by the performance. And look, the defensive record was the difference between them and the top 2 last season. It was a 3-horse race, but they were letting in more goals, and that was what cost them in the end. They've added a few defensive additions, which may help with that. But even then, the rest of the signings aren't inspiring. You've got a 35-year-old Scott Arfield coming in, which does add a bit of crucial experience, but I'm not sure they're going to have enough to deal with my top 3. And I just think maybe they'll sack Evatt early if they have a poor start and then go on a run. I don't know. But for me, I was surprised he kept his job, and I think it will be playoffs again, ultimately.
Fourth place for me is Wrexham.
Wow, I've got them mid-table.
No, I think Wrexham, I think
you don't know who they're going to sign at the end, do you? That's always the thing.
The things they've got players that are League One quality. Elliot Lee's a League One player. Paul Mullen's a League One player. They've got a very good team, and it's aggressive. And I think for Wrexham, I think they need that settling down. It's been chaotic in a good way of chaotic. Obviously, the first season with the new owner, shall I say, it had the mid-table. Obviously, they missed out on the person. Obviously, when they first turned up. Obviously, they had the playoffs heartbreak against Grimsby. They won the league with Notts County on 100-something points. Got straight back up to League One from League Two last season. And I feel like a little bit of calming down. I think when you go up so quickly, it does hinder because the money flow, and you have to keep changing and keep improving the stadium. And obviously, I know they're trying to do that. And it's more money. If they have a years of stability, then they might be all right. Wrexham, I feel, will be more of a team to beat than teams like Birmingham. And that's not disrespect to Birmingham. And I'm not saying Wrexham's a bigger club than Birmingham. It's because of who is in charge of the club, not the manager, but the owners. And obviously, everyone wants to be on TV. So I feel like they're more of a target than the big teams like Birmingham. So I'm going to go for fourth place. Good season for them, but we'll see how they get on the playoffs. Right, third place.
I'm sticking with it that if anyone's going to get in out of the promoted sides, it's Stockport, but I can see why you've gone from, and a lot will. Third place, I've gone for a team you've already mentioned, Charlton Athletic. It's going to be lovely to support Luton Town B this season, isn't it? Because Nathan Jones has well and truly got the old band back together. Luke Berry, let's be fair, fairly impressive in the Premier League at times last season. Dan Potts was brilliant for us in the Championship for years. He's going to end up joining there, I'm sure. And they've got money for Alfie May at 31 to a club that I'm sure we'll mention in a minute. And they've replaced him with Matty Godden at the same sort of age, who's a very good footballer and a very good goal scorer. So very impressive signings overall. I think the important thing for them, they've got a lot of young quality players coming through. It was just about getting a bit of experience and some good characters in the spine of the team. And I think that's why, even if they're not going to play much, people like Danny Hilton may want to be added to the dressing room just so they can have those sorts of experienced pros around them because they've got some cracking players coming through. They need to get back in the mix this season. It's not necessarily about getting promoted for Charlton this year. It's about being in that playoff mix, fighting at the right end of the table again. I'm pretty sure they'll challenge for the top six. And maybe a bit like what he did with Luton when he came in, first year playoffs and fail, and then the second year go up automatically. I could kind of see that happening with Charlton. So I've got them in third, but I'm not sure whether I've got them to go up yet.
Well, I'm talking my third place team. My third place team is Rotherham United. The Steve Evans effect, it will be in full swing, and they started well when he came back. Got a few victories in there, and I can see it happen again this season. Get those victories in, I think they'll be right up there. And I don't like yo-yo clubs. I know Luton could potentially be a yo-yo club, but Rotherham's definitely a yo-yo club of League One and the Championship, and I think they'll be very strong this season, Rotherham. So let's start with let's get to your playoff matches. Charlton v Blackpool. So Nathan Jones gets to face Blackpool again in the playoffs.
Well, the reason I said they might not go up the first time is because I was worried about that. If I'm being honest, I think that'll be a tight game. Maybe Charlton might. Well, both teams are going to have great experience in the squad. Do you know what? It's not often the third place team goes up, is it? I'm going to go for Blackpool to win that game, sneak through, and Charlton will go up the next year.
And Bolton v Peterborough, two teams who have struggled in the playoffs in recent times.
Yeah, battle of the most scarred, isn't it? I think it depends who's in charge of Bolton at the end of the year, to be honest, because if Ian Everett's still there, the signs haven't been good in recent times, and they have let in goals, which is exactly what Peterborough wants. So I think I would cautiously go towards Bolton, but I think that's a really tough one to call. I'll go Bolton though.
So Blackpool v Bolton is your final.
I know you're going to have Bolton in your top two, so I feel the only way to get around this is to put Blackpool as the promoted side as a chance because, most of the other leagues we've been pretty similar. So I'm going to go. I think Blackpool might do it. They've got goal scorers, and on the day, someone like Jordan Rhodes will step up to the big occasion. Bolton haven't shown any evidence they will, and I guess if they're fourth in the league, will they keep Ian Everett? Probably. So I'll say Blackpool to nick it by a goal at Wembley in a pretty poor final.
Okay, so my playoffs is Rotherham versus Huddersfield, which is a Neil Warnock derby. I think Rotherham will beat Huddersfield. Well, it's Yorkshire derby too.
Yeah.
And Wrexham versus Charlton. I think Charlton will beat Wrexham. And we'll get to see some Nathan Jones chest bumps.
And then you'll get to see him against Steve Evans.
And Steve Evans final. And I am going to go for another run down the touchline winner for Rotherham. So Steve Evans and Rotherham United will be promoted, in my opinion. Charlie's going to be absolutely disgusted with this prediction because I've hammered Steve Evans all year round. Right, let's get to the top two. I feel like the top two ain't similar, but I feel like one team's definitely going to be in the top two. But what position? So let's start with the second place, codes.
I did think about putting them in second, but based on their squad at the moment, I have no option but to leave them first, which I think probably by process of elimination, you can work out who I've got second. And it's the team that you just had to get promoted, which is Rotherham United, because look, let's be honest, that second season in the Championship was absolutely pitiful. They were not competitive. They were pretty awful to watch. Went on huge runs of games without even scoring a goal. It was terrible, and they needed to come down. They looked beaten for half the year. Steve Evans comes back for a second spell. You mentioned the first one, the infamous run down the touchline. It was a double promotion then. Not sure we'll get a double one this time because that would be a real miracle. But the one thing you can guarantee, whether you like him or not, is he'll restore the competitive edge to that side, which was sorely missing last season. They've completely rebuilt the squad. Some of the players coming in. I mean, you could argue on paper that they might have the strongest side in the division now with the players that he's brought in. He's taken half the defence from Pompey, who won the league last year. Johnson, Clark, Harris up front. We know exactly what he's going to do at this level. They've just added quality all over the park. A couple from Sheffield Wednesday, a few from the Championship. He wheels and deals. It's what he does. He did it with Stevenage and took them up, and I think it will do the same with Rotherham. I've got them in second, and I'm fairly confident that they'll get promoted.
Second place for me is Birmingham City. Birmingham City. obviously the expectation is going to be, obviously you're going to be favourites, no doubt about it. But yeah, it's a fresh start for them. Obviously, and Birmingham were in that category of you're clawing your way out of the relegation zone for so many years. One day you're going to get caught out, and it was Birmingham's time. And they made mistakes during last season, which effectively killed them. They got rid of John Eustace and brought in Wayne Rooney, and that was a bad decision because John Eustace at the time we were in the playoffs. Wayne Rooney came in, didn't do well. Tony Mowbray actually is not a bad find for Birmingham, but obviously his health reasons, and it just once that one, it was always going to be a tough task. But the only problem with Birmingham not winning is Chris Davis never really had a managerial job, so it's a bit of an unknown, and who knows what we can expect. He's always been like a number two. Obviously, he was at Tottenham as one of the coaches, so that's the only reason I'm not going for them to win it. It's a bit of the unknown, but promotion, that's what they need. They need to get back in the Championship. And by process of elimination, you've got them as your winners.
I have got them as my winners, and I'm not certain about this, to be honest. I ummed and ahed about it, but it's been sort of the theme of these pre-season prediction shows, hasn't it? Talking about clubs that have made poor managerial decisions, and as you mentioned, the timing of Birmingham's ones the last year or so wasn't great. They were trying to chase their preferred style rather than securing stability first, which is what Eustace would have done for another season. And ultimately, the two managers that they had earlier on last season are both managing in the Championship this year. And I know one of those is a slight surprise, but Birmingham have got to look at that. We know they've gone for Chris Davis. The only uncertainty, as we always know, is man management skills. We always use the example of the two Joneses at Luton. You don't know until they're in that number one hot seat how they're going to deal with managing players. He's clearly a very good coach. It could be a masterstroke. They've cleared out loads of the deadwood, the experienced pros. They've replaced them with proven operators at all ends of the pitch. You've got Ryan Allsop and Bailey Peacock Farrell as your two keepers. Alfie Mayen from Charlton up front will score goals at this level. And they've signed lots of other players from across Europe. So I guess the only other question is they're all going to be good technical operators, but how quickly will they settle to English football? That's the only potential concern. I'm not 100% sure they win it, but on paper, you have to predict them to go up. It's as simple as that.
Yep, and my winners are Bolton Wanderers. I think the arrogance kind of killed them. I think in that playoff final, I think most people would have anticipated Bolton to beat Oxford, and as you said before, obviously they didn't turn up on the day, and they got really found out in that first half. And the game was over at 2-0 when Josh Murphy scored that second goal. So they never really recovered. Obviously, it will be a hangover. I do think they use a bit of bounce back ability, and I think they'll try and strive to win it, but it'd be a tight race. I don't think they're going to walk with it. I think it'll be a very close battle between them and Birmingham. Right, let's have a quick recap what we have predicted for League One in the 24-25 season. Let's start with the relegation zone. Finishing bottom, we have both agreed on Crawley Town. In 23rd place, Daniel Coe's gone for Shrewsbury. I've gone for Burton Albion. 22nd place, Daniel Coe's gone for Mansfield. I've gone for Cambridge. And in 21st, Daniel Coe's gone for Cambridge, and I've gone for Stevenage. In the playoffs, 6th place, Daniel Coe's gone for Blackpool. 5th, Peterborough. 4th, Bolton. And 3rd, Charlton, with Blackpool winning the playoffs. I've gone for Huddersfield 6th, Charlton 5th, Wrexham 4th, and Rotherham 3rd, with Rotherham winning the playoffs. And finally, the top two, Daniel Coe's gone for Rotherham in 2nd, and Birmingham is his winners. I've gone for Birmingham in 2nd and Bolton as champions. And those are predictions for the League One season 24-25. Do you agree with us or disagree with us? Let us know down in the comments. And while you're down in the comments, have a look at Fantasy EFL. Please join the league. You'll be competing against me, Cody, and Charlie. It's all good fun. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, and you can follow us on all our socials, Instagram, TikTok, and X at Honest Football Podcast. And we'll see you next time.